Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico CASA. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining Kristen and I for today's conversation. As always, we are happy you are here.
Yep, because you matter.
You do. And if you haven't been listening, that's a reference to our last episode when we talked about how important it is to let children know that they really matter.
Exactly. Children need to feel valued. And unfortunately, those children who are living in abuse or neglect situations don't always feel that way, right? Which is why we wanted to talk about it.
And that's because, as a reminder, the whole purpose of this podcast is for us to know more about the challenges facing children and families in order for no child to face continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Right. And today we want to take that concept of feeling valued a step further.
Right. We want children to feel valued, but then we also want to help children add value.
Yeah, and there's an important distinction there. Feeling valued means someone cares about you, but adding value means kind of realizing that you can contribute to the world or to others.
And research shows that both are essential for healthy development.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Children, and then especially teens, don't just want to be cared for. They also want to help contribute and make a difference.
Yeah, which brings a teen named Alice to mind.
Oh, yeah.
We shared about Alice and her siblings in our last episode, and a quick reminder that we do change names and identifying details to maintain.
I do think those are helpful reminders, just because I really always want everyone to understand how important privacy and confidentiality is to us.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so when we left off last week, Alice was back to attending school, and her caregiver was making an effort to show Alice that she's valued. But they still had a long way to go in terms of repairing the relationship after years of emotional abuse. Mm-hmm. Alice's advocate was seeing positive changes, but was still concerned about Alice's participation in school and her role in the family. One of the main things was Alice was not attending school regularly.
Okay, and why was that? Have we figured that out?
Yeah, so Alice often felt like she had to stay home to take care of her younger siblings who weren't school-aged yet.
Okay.
So she knew if she wasn't home, their needs might not being met.
Right. And so it sounds like she was being what we call in the child welfare space parentified.
Yeah.
Which I guess as simply as possible, it means Alice was taking on more responsibility than should be expected of someone her age, and frankly, responsibility that should have been falling to a parent or a caregiver.
Right.
Right.
And that is true. And that wasn't helping build the narrative that Alice mattered.
Individually.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because she didn't feel like she was being seen like as an independent human being, like her needs weren't being considered.
Right. And feeling valued matters is so important for Alice to really move forward.
Right.
And before we move forward in today's conversation about adding value, let's just first remind ourselves, just again, because we addressed this on our last episode, why feeling valued is so healthy for children.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the core, it's because research shows that feeling valued fosters secure attachment, it boosts confidence, and it builds emotional resilience.
Yeah. And as we talked about last episode, it actually strengthens a child's brain development. Mm-hmm. It specifically helps with emotional regulation and reduces stress. So feeling valued changes the brain and actually helps encourage positive social behaviors.
Right. And this really, you are speaking, Kristen, directly to what we call brain architecture.
Yeah.
But it also makes sense on just a sort of fundamental common sense level. Mm-hmm. Because when children feel their mere presence matters, then they really are more likely to thrive socially, emotionally, and academically.
Yeah. And one of the positive social behaviors associated with feeling valued is a desire to help.
Right.
Studies show that children as young as 18 months old actually do try to help adults.
Yeah, which is just funny to think about, right? But I'm pretty sure we've all seen this, right? And an example could be as simple as a toddler picking something up that someone dropped.
Yeah.
Or trying to hand you something like, you need this.
Yeah.
They're not in that moment doing it for a reward. They're actually doing it because they thought they were going to be contributing something, and it feels good to them.
Yeah. And when little ones' contributions, as small as, handing you something, like in that example, are welcomed and recognized, they start to internalize the belief that they can make a difference.
Yeah, and at such a young age, right?
Yeah.
And that belief, then, if well nurtured, can grow into full-blown empathy, responsibility, and self-esteem.
Yeah. So, listener, how can we build upon this? What are some practical ways that we can help children add value?
Well, one of the best ways is to give children meaningful roles.
Yeah, and I like how you said meaningful roles, because we don't want to create pretend ones.
Right.
They sense that, and it leads to anti-mattering, which we talked about in the last episode.
Right. We want to give children real jobs or responsibilities. And so, again, simple, whether it's chores, etc., but setting the table, feeding a pet, passing out papers in class, helping organize things around the house, right?
Yeah. The list could go on, right? And it's really dependent on a child's age and stage of development, right? So I'm going to link to a list of age-appropriate responsibilities that starts with toddlers.
Oh, that's great.
And that way you can check it out, listener, and see what makes sense for the children in your life.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And, when a child then helps us, we also need to make sure that we recognize it and then acknowledge it. So when doing so, our language as adults matter.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of saying, well, thanks for helping, maybe it's a slight shift in tone that says, you're quite the helper, right? Thank you. That small shift helps children feel part of something bigger and see contribution as part of their identity.
Yeah, I like that. We can help them identify as a helper is what you're saying. And in the same way, we can help them identify as someone who can solve problems.
Right. Now, I will say, though, to do this, we need to resist the urge to fix everything immediately,
I knew you were going to say that. Yes, so true. And it's tempting to just jump in, right? Because we as adults know we can do it better and faster.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we solve the problem, we don't give them the opportunity to help and to grow. So we need to hold back and let them help us solve problems, big or small, because then it builds their confidence.
That's right. Even asking simple questions like, well, what do you think we should do? Or how could we fix this together?
Yeah.
Right?
And then, regardless of how their helping turns out, we want to recognize the effort, not just some sort of achievement.
Yeah, because when kids contribute, recognition matters.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be huge praise, and it shouldn't feel forced or fake, but sometimes it's as simple as saying, that really helped, or thanks for giving that a try with me.
Right. And, some of the initial ideas, just as we've been talking, that came to my mind when we were discussing this topic of adding value or helping were related to children and teens in their homes. But, now, Kristen, that we've been talking about this and brainstorming, I love to add that kids also need opportunities to contribute beyond their family.
Oh, yeah, right? You're right. Yeah. Things like helping kids at school, right? Or participating in a community service project, even joining a team or a club, right? Experiences like these reinforce the idea that you matter to others and your actions also matter to others.
Yeah, it's that group accountability, right?
Yeah.
And at CASA, we have learned that realistically, for the children involved in the court system or foster care, sometimes their opportunities to contribute have been or can be limited.
Yeah.
And that's because they're often the ones receiving help in that moment. But they're not necessarily always given chances to give help.
Yeah. And also because, the reason they're involved in the child welfare system is likely related to abuse or neglect, indicating they probably didn't feel valued to begin with.
Right.
They didn't have that baseline. Yeah. So the idea of adding value is beyond their reach, in terms of the situation and the circumstances they've been facing.
Yeah. And I guess we just also wouldn't want to unintentionally reinforce what we would call a harmful identity of well, I'm the problem. I'm the one, who needs fixing.
Right. And so we want to help children experience something different. I have strengths. I can help others. And I'm happy to say that I think Alice is moving into that realm of thinking.
Oh, that's one, that's great. And two, I'm really glad that we're now circling back to her story again.
Yeah. Okay. So, listener, remember, we were concerned about Alice's parentification, which is detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
It's developmentally inappropriate role reversal, basically, like where a child is assuming adult duties.
Yeah. And just as an aside, we really do see this a lot at CASA because, the children we serve have parents or caregivers who, are struggling to perform their adult role as a caregiver in a safe and healthy way.
Yeah, right. So Alice's advocate worked hard to help Alice feel seen, feel heard, feel valued, like as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
She made her feel special and unique. She recognized her efforts, not just her achievements.
Mm.
She also helped Alice's foster family set boundaries so that Alice didn't have to play a role in parenting her siblings.
Right.
And so over time, Alice started gaining confidence, like just in herself, regardless of her role in taking care of others. And the more that she felt like she mattered, the more it opened her up to showing her siblings that they matter too.
Yeah, that's super sweet. And in some way, it's like she's paying it forward with that message of you matter.
Yeah. And so, listener, you matter to us, right?
Yeah.
And we know that the children in your lives matter to you.
Yes. So here's the challenge for this week. Help a child do something that matters to someone else.
Yeah. Maybe that's helping cook dinner or writing a thank you note
Mm-hmm.
or assisting a younger child. Maybe it's like contributing to an idea together to solve a problem.
Yeah.
But no matter what it is, make sure the child hears the message that their contribution made a difference.
I love that. And it's really because when children know they matter and that they can add value to the world at large, they begin to see themselves not as problems to be solved, but as people who can shape their own future.
Yeah, and that's the kind of belief that changes lives. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico CASA's podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.